On January 26, 1945, at 2:20 p.m., amid the icy expanses near Holtzwihr, France, an unbelievable scene unfolded through the haze of gunfire and turmoil. One lone U.S. trooper, perched atop a flaming tank destroyer, was methodically halting the push of a whole German battalion. The seasoned Alpine fighters from the 2nd Gaybergs Division, transferred from Norway just for this push, found their momentum shattered by what looked like a young lad barely tipping the scales at 50 kilo. Beyond the enemy front, 6 armored beasts, Panzer IVs and tank destroyers that had steamrolled foes throughout Europe, idled helplessly, their officers frozen in disbelief, unwilling to press on Sand's infantry backing, which a solitary American was relentlessly picking off. The bolstered German unit's 250 troops had stumbled into a scenario that defied Wehrmacht battle theory. A lone defender repelling a full-scale, mechanized assault. The odds were brutal. 40 weary GIs facing 250 crack mountain infantrymen, plus 6 tanks. According to all tenets of warfare strategy, the U.S. line ought to have crumbled in moments. Yet, for that surreal hour, 2nd Lieutenant Audie Leon Murphy upended the very tenets of combat. His journey to that scorched vehicle traced back to the cotton patches of Hunt County, Texas, where Audie Murphy entered the world on June 20, 1925, into a family of destitute tenant farmers. As the 6th among 12 kids, his early years were shaped by grinding hardship and heavy duties. His dad walked out when Audie hit 12. By 1941, his mom succumbed to endocarditis and pneumonia, thrusting the 16-year-old into the role of main breadwinner for his little brothers and sisters. "If my shots miss, the family goes hungry that night," the young Murphy once confided to neighbor Monroe Hackton, accounting for his remarkable shooting prowess. That kid could nail a sprinting rabbit from 50 yards using a .22 that folks usually couldn't even ping a barn door with. Every round cost cash they scarcely had, and every whiff spelled bare plates. Facing such stakes, Murphy honed a sharpshooter's gaze that would later strike dread into Wehrmacht ranks across 3 nations. The Pearl Harbor strike opened a door for him. Enlistment promised reliable income, regular chow, and cash remittances to aid his kin. Yet for the pint-sized youth, signing up was no easy feat. At 5'5" and 110 pounds, he got turned away by the Marines and Navy for being undersized. Even Army airborne units passed. At last, Standard Infantry took him in on June 30, 1942, after Sister Karen submitted a forged statement asserting he was 18. Private First Class David Mouse McClure, a basic training buddy from Camp Walters, Texas, remembered later, "We figured he was some kind of good luck charm initially. This scrawny youngster, seeming no older than 14 and light as a feather, the instructors hounded him non-stop, dubbing him the infant." Still, his gaze held a certain edge. Out on the firing line, those pale blue eyes turned icy as a blizzard. He hit every mark without fail. Murphy's shift from rural Texan to deadly fighter ignited with the Sicily landings in July 1943. Company B of the 15th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division, hit the shores at Licata under Patton's 7th Army. In Sicily's rugged hills, he uncovered a grim talent that shadowed him lifelong. He excelled at taking lives. His country roots had instilled stealthy movement, smart use of cover, and swift, precise fire. Close to Palermo, as his outfit got bogged down by heavy automatic fire, Private Murphy flanked the foe's nest, wiped out the gunners with explosives, and swung their gun against the fleeing opposition. Captain Paul Harris put him in for the Bronze Star, noting, "This trooper shows an innate talent for battle that's remarkable for someone so youthful and green." The push through Italy elevated Murphy from solid fighter to mythic figure. During the Volturno River breach in October 1943, he single-handedly staved off a German riposte after his team got shredded. Borrowing a long-range rifle, he dropped 5 enemies from over 300 yards out. That earned him the Distinguished Service Cross. Staff Sergeant William Polson broke down Murphy's fighting style. Murph never battled in rage. That's what unnerved everyone. He engaged with chill precision as if solving equations. Spot an adversary, take him down, shift to the next. Zero feeling, no pause, pure lethal rhythm. At Anzio, that gore-drenched foothold Churchill dubbed the Wildcat, Murphy snagged his initial Silver Star by blasting a German armor at kissing distance with a rocket launcher. Come the southern France assault in August 1944, he had endured Sicily, Salerno, Anzio, and the liberation of Rome. Wounded on 2 occasions, honored repeatedly, he built a notoriety on both sides as a man to dread. In the thick of while, traversing southern France, Sergeant Murphy assumed leadership of the platoon after his platoon leader fell in an ambush close to Montélimar. With just 18 soldiers, he orchestrated a defensive stand against a German force exceeding 100 troops, securing a vital intersection for 2 full hours and single-handedly eliminating 15 foes. This display of command led to his on-the-spot promotion to second lieutenant on October 14, 1944. Come January 1945, as Company B neared the Colmar pocket, Murphy bore little resemblance to the youthful enlisté from 1942. The rigors of battle had matured him far beyond his 19 years. Most of his initial comrades lay dead or injured. He himself had taken down more than 100 adversaries. The Colmar pocket embodied the grim essence of winter combat, an 850-square-mile German salient west of the Rhine. It marked the final stretch of French territory under Wehrmacht control. Hitler demanded it be defended relentlessly. The enemy had bolstered it with elite surviving formations, such as the 2nd Mountain Division, honed for frigid Norwegian engagements. For Company B, the outlook was dire. Over 5 days of clashes before January 26th, they suffered 102 casualties from wounds, with every officer save Murphy either slain or pulled from the line. From an initial roster of 187, only 40 remained combat ready. Murphy pressed on despite a shrapnel-inflicted leg injury from 2 days prior, keeping it secret from all. Private Anthony Abramsky captured their plight. We were finished, done. Most of us hadn't slept in 3 days. We'd been living on cold K rations when we could eat at all. Half the guys had frostbite. Our machine guns were freezing up. We tried all night to dig foxholes, but the ground was like iron. When dawn came and we saw our positions strung out along the edge of the woods with open fields in front of us, we knew we were sitting ducks. January 26, 1945, broke with a dull, piercing chill. Thermometers lingered near freezing amid gusts that pierced even the thickest greatcoats. Snowdrifts reached 3 feet in spots, yet relentless shelling had transformed large swaths of the terrain into a desolate waste of iced-over muck. Company B dug in along the fringe of the Badavier woods, staring across almost a mile of exposed terrain toward the German-occupied hamlet of Holzfähr. Murphy arranged his reduced unit as effectively as possible. A pair of M10 tank destroyers offered his sole defense against armor. His foot soldiers stretched thinly beside the tree line. He set up his headquarters in a shallow gully, which afforded partial cover and an unobstructed vista of the advancing terrain. Telephone wires linked him to the artillery units providing aid, his primary chance to repel a fierce onslaught. The enemy assault opened with a punishing cannonade starting at 1300 hours. Airbursts in the canopy rained lethal shrapnel onto Company B's outposts. The pounding endured for 30 minutes, feeling eternal to those pinned beneath it. By 1400 hours, the German push emerged into view. Private First Class Donald Ekman was the initial spotter. You could see the pennants on the antenna of the German tanks, 6 of them spread out in attack formation, and behind them, Jesus Christ, there must have been 250 infantry, all in white snow camouflage, moving across that field like ghosts. Murphy's immediate response was to summon shelling from the guns, yet firepower from afar couldn't halt the advance entirely. The attackers were too dispersed, too plentiful, and advancing with haste. At 600 yards, the M10s unleashed their rounds. Initial volleys went astray. The operators were fatigued and stiff from the cold. The Germans replied swiftly and fiercely. An 80mm round slammed into the rear M10's turret. The destroyer erupted in fire, its occupants fleeing toward the forest. The lead M10, seeking a superior angle, skidded off course into a water channel, its treads slipping on the slick surface. The team inside bailed out and withdrew. Around 1420 hours, as the tank destroyers lay disabled and the German foot soldiers neared 200 yards, Murphy issued the call that secured his Medal of Honor. He directed his surviving troops to withdraw to fortified spots amid the trees, yet he held his ground. Rather than flee, he dashed amid the ongoing bombardment to the blazing M10. Flames consumed the rear of the machine, where the 80mm impact had set off its fuel and shells. Thick, dark fumes billowed from the chassis. The blaze radiated such ferocity that it scorched from 30 feet distant. At any second, the leftover munitions might detonate, rendering the wreck a colossal explosive. Murphy scaled the destroyer and seized control of its .50 caliber M2 Browning. Elevated there, he commanded a sweeping arc of fire over the oncoming enemy ranks. But he stood utterly vulnerable, one lone silhouette etched against the heavens without any shield. All that remained visible amid the chaos was the plume of smoke rising from the flaming vehicle below. From his vantage point along the tree line, Private First Class Anthony Abramsky observed the scene. He witnessed Lieutenant Murphy scaling the top of the blazing tank destroyer as volleys of machine gun bursts echoed nearby. Shots from the oncoming enemy troops hammered the vehicle's armor and tracks. It stood as the most extraordinary exhibition of bravery and resolve I'd ever encountered. The M2 Browning proved a formidable armament when wielded by an expert. Capable of unleashing 550 rounds per minute at an effective distance of 2,000 millirallers, its .50 caliber projectiles could pierce thin plating and shred flesh in brutal fashion. Under Murphy's control, it transformed into a tool of calculated devastation. Over the following hour, he manned the potent machine gun with remarkable precision. During the fierce clash, he stayed linked via telephone to the backing artillery units, directing strikes perilously near his own spot. The synergy of his gunfire and the barrages he summoned formed an impenetrable barrier of metal that halted the German foot soldiers cold. Sergeant Elma Brawley, peering from the forest's fringe, noted the details. Enemy troops pressed to within 10 yards of Lieutenant Murphy, only for him to eliminate them in the underbrush, across the open fields, amid the trees, anywhere they appeared. The harsh weather amplified the heroism of Murphy's defense. Ice-hard soil had thwarted any solid digging of foxholes. Sightlines shifted under gloomy clouds that sporadically parted. Bitter chill hampered gun functions and plagued troops with frostbite after prolonged fighting. Murphy's perch atop the M10 offered key edges he mastered with skill. The tank destroyer occupied a modest rise, surveying the foe's path and granting wide firing arcs. With the .50 caliber's 2,000 minnow reach, he struck distant threats while the Inferno's haze blocked precise enemy countershots. The Germans faced a hopeless strategic bind. Their armored units, poised to overrun the battered U.S. lines, realized advancement demanded foot soldier cover, a force Murphy was methodically dismantling. Wehrmacht tactics relied on integrated assaults, and deprived of protection against near threats, the tanks pulled back to avoid encirclement. Technical Sergeant Morris Wald, scanning via field glasses from the battalion headquarters, later attested to the potency of Murphy's efforts. He didn't merely unleash wild salvos, each triggered burst hit its mark. He dispatched German soldiers with the accuracy of a marksman at a range. I watched him dispatch a whole enemy team attempting to circle our flank. Around 1,500 hours, following 40 minutes of non-stop shooting, Murphy's ammo supply dwindled, the barrel radiated heat turning crimson. The vehicle under him sank deeper as its treads and wheels softened in the blaze. Foe soldiers had edged to 10 yards away. Private Charles Owen remembered, "We heard the lieutenant's .50 caliber faltering. He was nearly out of rounds. A few Germans caught on and charged ahead. Murphy snatched his carbine and began dropping them one by one. By about 15:10 hours, as his rounds nearly vanished and enemy troops neared 10 yards, Murphy issued the battle's boldest command. He demanded artillery target his exact location. The spotter, Lieutenant Walter Weiss Fenning, hesitated at first, aware it spelled doom for Murphy. Yet Murphy pressed, "That's a direct command. Strike my position immediately." Initial impacts fell just 50 yards from the smoldering tank destroyer. Blasts hurled icy dirt and fragments everywhere. Exposed attackers were ripped to pieces, though Murphy, perched openly atop the rig, lay in the blast radius too. Fragments ripped into his leg, his second injury that day, but he kept discharging his remaining shots. Together, Murphy's close-range volleys and the shelling shattered the assault. The remnant enemy force, roughly 100 strong, pulled away toward Holzwihr. The armor, lacking escorts and under growing shell precision, turned tail and retreated. Near 15-20 hours after a full hour of unrelenting action, Murphy descended from the scorched M10. His clothes bore burn marks from the intense warmth. Blood trickled from his legs' shrapnel gashes. The tank destroyer blazed on in his wake, detonating 10 minutes post-evacuation. The terrain ahead lay in ruin. German corpses dotted the frosted landscape. War scholars reckon 50 fatalities, with scores more hurt. The leftover adversaries fled outright, their leaders powerless to regroup for fresh pushes. Murphy trudged to the tree line where his comrades held. As Private Abramsky described, he remained composed, eerily so. He inquired whether the shelling had inflicted any losses on us, confirmed that all were safe, and then settled into a chair to smoke a cigarette as if the ordeal had never occurred. His fingers showed no tremor. One of the most remarkable features in the historical records of this event is the virtual lack of direct German perspectives. Even after thorough examinations of German army archives, the Bundesarchiv, and groups of former soldiers, no quotes from German troops, journal notes, or prisoner statements regarding Murphy's feat have appeared in readily available sources. This quiet is especially striking considering the ferocity of the clash and the astonishment it undoubtedly provoked in the advancing enemy lines. Multiple reasons account for this scarcity in documentation. The involved German outfits endured around 50 losses solely from Murphy's efforts, probably wiping out numerous would-be observers. Wehrmacht divisional files from that era were frequently lost during the conflict's closing stages. The swift enemy pullback after the botched assault, portrayed in U.S. accounts as dejected due to their stalled advance, indicates a dispirited group not inclined to record an embarrassing setback in battle strategy. Operational logs have pinpointed the German units. The 2nd Mountain Division supplied the main foot soldiers, backed by parts of the 708th Volksgrenadier Division and the 285th Assault Gun Battalion. These outfits were top tier. The Alpine fighters especially were seasoned combatants with broad battlefield exposure, rendering their collapse against one lone resistor even more jarring to German combat doctrines. The 2nd Mountain Division's log for January 26th notes merely that an assault on U.S. outposts near Holzwihr was turned back with severe tolls. Foe opposition tougher than anticipated. This brief record masks the turmoil that likely gripped the German troops. Seasoned Alpine warriors who had battled in Norway, Finland, and on the Eastern Front had faced nothing comparable. Just one fighter who appeared impervious to dread, exhaustion, and the fundamental drive to survive. After the war, German military reviews incorporated the fight into their examination. Weidingen gegen Übermacht, Defense Against Superior Forces, issued in 1965. The review highlighted various elements leading to their loss. Excessive assurance from their manpower edge, rigid maneuvers once the first push halted, and breakdowns in joint operations as armor and foot soldiers couldn't sync up properly. The enemy never launched a follow-up strike on Company B's line. That evening, shielded by nightfall, they evacuated the area completely. Alpine experts specially transferred from Norway for this push. Fighters who hadn't fallen back in 4 years of combat pulled out sans directives from their group leader. The mental blow of halting before a solitary U.S. serviceman proved more crippling than the bodily wounds. Murphy's defense at Holzwihr rippled well past the instant battlefield success. The firm stand allowed the 3rd Infantry Division to secure its grip on the vital Badenweiler Woods, which overlooked routes to Holzwihr village. The enemy's inability to pierce through sealed the fate of the Colmar pocket soon after. Holzwihr itself succumbed to the 30th Infantry Regiment the next day, January 27, 1945. In mere weeks, the whole German foothold west of the Rhine was erased, sidelining 50,000 enemy personnel and releasing Allied units for the climactic drive into the Reich. The skirmish proved that even crack German groups could no longer surmount resolute U.S. opposition, no matter their numbers. General Jean de Lattre de Tassigny, head of the French First Army, acknowledged the significance, the safeguarding of Holzwir's entry points by the American 3rd Division, especially Lieutenant Murphy's remarkable deed, shattered the spine of German opposition in Alsace. Insights from Murphy's defense, notably the potency of integrated cannon fire and machine guns in holding ground, shaped U.S. combat guidelines through the end of the European theater. French honors arrived via the 3rd Infantry Division, earning permission to display the French Croix de Guerre in 2000. A monument rose at the site of the clash, guaranteeing that locals would honor the youthful American who aided in freeing their territory. The formal Medal of Honor commendation, handed over by Lieutenant General Alexander Patch on June 2, 1945, offers the Armed Forces' official nod to Murphy's prowess. The commendation's wording, characteristically restrained in such papers, strains to convey the action's exceptional quality. Isolated and vulnerable to enemy shots from 3 directions, yet his lethal barrage felled scores of foes and made their foot assault falter. For enduring that intense hour, German forces unleashed every weapon in their arsenal against 2nd Lieutenant Murphy, yet he steadfastly maintained his ground. The presentation of the award close to Salzburg, Austria, gathered together the remaining veterans from the 3rd Infantry Division so they could observe their fellow soldier being presented with the country's most prestigious military distinction. Brigadier General Ralph B. Lovett and Lieutenant Colonel Howlett D. Edson, the officers who had nominated Murphy for the decoration, highlighted how his efforts had prevented Company B from total annihilation and allowed the division to secure vital ground. Murphy's persistent modesty about labeling his deeds as brave stayed with him all his days. In response to questions about scaling the flaming tank destroyer, he replied with his typical straightforwardness, "They were taking out my buddies. It wasn't some gallant move. I thought if a single person could handle it, why endanger everyone else?" Murphy's ongoing battle after the war with what was known back then as shell shock, today identified as PTSD, renders his experiences especially pertinent to contemporary insights into the mental burdens of warfare. He dealt with persistent sleeplessness, repeated night terrors, and constant alertness that prompted him to keep a loaded handgun beneath his pillow while resting. In time, he shifted to slumbering in his garage under bright lights, unable to bear the shadows that evoked memories of nocturnal fights. "I recall the ordeal like it's a recurring bad dream. Some inner devil appeared to possess my form," Murphy penned regarding his battlefield ordeals. His openness in discussing these personal battles spurred the enactment of a law that established the Audie L. Murphy Memorial VA Hospital in San Antonio in 1973, just 2 years following his fatal plane accident at the age of 45. Murphy's initial union with Wanda Hendricks endured a mere 16 months, undone by outbursts tied to his PTSD. Hendricks would later recount that he seemed like dual personalities. By daylight, he might come across as engaging, witty, and open-handed, but come evening, he transformed into another individual. He would roam the home armed with a chambered firearm. He would rest in the garage illuminated because gloom triggered recollections of evening reconnaissance. Even amid his personal hardships, Murphy emerged as a pioneering supporter for ex-servicemen grappling with mental wounds from combat. In 1966, he contributed an article to the Saturday Evening Post. "I can't recall a time without night terrors. They integrated into my existence, as routine as inhaling. Yet I was fortunate. I had the means for physicians, drugs, counseling. And the soldier without resources, what of the multitudes returning from Vietnam facing identical issues?" Murphy's impact at Holtzwihr gained even greater force from the armaments he utilized. The M2 Browning 50 caliber machine gun, engineered by John Browning in 1918, stood as perhaps the premier heavy machine gun of the Second World War. Its 50 BMG round was capable of breaching 1 inch of armored steel at 100 yards. Every projectile inflicted catastrophic damage on personnel. The round's muzzle energy, surpassing 13,000 foot-pounds, could essentially dismember a person's frame. The M10 tank destroyer housed 51 rounds of 3-inch shells in its body, plus 1,000 rounds of 50 caliber ammo and 300 gallons of fuel. When the German 88 mm round impacted, it set the gasoline ablaze, generating flames that soared beyond 1,000 degree F. That the machine smoldered for more than an hour, absent a significant detonation, was nothing short of remarkable. Murphy was practically perched atop an explosive device with an active igniter. The cannon fire that Murphy coordinated proved just as vital. The 105mm howitzers launched a 33-pound high explosive projectile across more than 11,000 meters. Every such projectile generated a 50-meter explosion zone, with fragments deadly up to 200 meters. Murphy's skill in refining this bombardment to as near as 50 yards from his location, perilously close by all measures, vastly intensified his fighting effectiveness. Experts in military studies have tried to quantify the odds of Murphy enduring the fight at Holtzwihr. Considering the opposing German units, 250-foot soldiers armed with rifles and automatics, alongside 6 armored vehicles equipped with primary cannons and linked machine guns, roughly 10,000 shots were directed at Murphy's spot over the course of the 1-hour clash. Even factoring in suboptimal aiming owing to distance and Murphy's partial cover from fumes, analytical projections indicate he ought to have sustained 15 to 20 wounds. The bodily strain of managing the M2 Browning in such circumstances bordered on impossible. The gun tipped the scales at 84 pounds and delivered fierce kickback. Murphy needed to steady himself atop the inferno-engulfed machine while countering the gun's jolt, the whole time under fire from multiple angles. The haze from the conflagration would have hindered respiration and complicated sighting. For years, scholars of military history and mine science have pondered the elements that enabled Murphy to deliver such remarkable battlefield feats. Did his roots in poverty instill a ruthless drive to persist? Did his time hunting normalize the act of taking life? Or was it merely fate placing him ideally at that moment? Dr. Dave Grossman, writer of On Killing and a foremost authority on the psychology of battle, provides this perspective. Murphy embodied an ideal convergence of influences. He possessed the practical expertise honed through hunting. The drive stemmed from hardship in his youth, the emotional numbness born of childhood hardships, and above all, a fierce loyalty to his troops that trumped any concern for his own safety. This view finds backing in Murphy's personal accounts. Whenever questioned about scaling the flaming tank destroyer, he always responded identically, "They were taking out my guys." The intimate phrasing of that reply uncovers what truly fueled Murphy. It had nothing to do with maneuvers or plans. It centered on shielding the fighters under his leadership. Murphy himself acknowledged how battle had altered him profoundly. During a 1968 conversation, just 3 years prior to his passing, he mused, "Folks describe that moment as heroic. Perhaps it was, yet on that day, I morphed into something beyond human. I became a relentless destroyer. Emotions vanished. No terror, no rage, only an icy resolve to annihilate." Audie Murphy's wartime achievements stand alone among U.S. service members. He earned every Valor Medal the U.S. Army offered, with several awarded multiple times. Among his 33 honors were the Medal of Honor, Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, Legion of Merit, 2 Bronze Stars, and 3 Purple Hearts, alongside 5 from France and Belgium. Yet Murphy's enduring impact extends far past these awards. His pioneering efforts for soldiers' psychological well-being were far ahead of their era. The Audie Murphy Memorial VA Hospital focuses on addressing PTSD and similar battle-induced mental traumas. His memoir, To Hell and Back, has aided countless ex-servicemen in understanding they aren't isolated in their battles. Murphy's tale has woven itself into the fabric of U.S. Armed Forces tradition. At the U.S. Army Infantry School, his stand at Holtzwihr serves as a key example in studies of defensive tactics, command amid chaos, and coordinating fire support. The Audie Murphy Club honors outstanding NCOs who embody leadership traits akin to his. Master Sergeant Ronald Johnson, head of the Fort Hood chapter of the Audie Murphy Club, highlights its ongoing importance. Each new cohort of troops requires role models, illustrations of what everyday individuals can achieve in dire situations. Murphy reminds our forces that heroism doesn't demand towering at 6 feet or a lineage of soldiers. You simply need to prioritize your comrades over your own life. Experts in the military frequently discuss if such a defense could occur in today's fights. Advancements in tech have reshaped warfare entirely. With satellites, unmanned aircraft, and guided weapons, the field of battle feels exposed, rendering solo feats of bravery appear unfeasible. Still, ongoing wars prove differently. In Afghanistan and Iraq, U.S. troops have seen lone fighters pull off remarkable deeds that recall Murphy's resolve. Staff Sergeant David Balavia's intense urban combat in Fallujah, Sergeant First Class Paul Smith's defiant gun position in Baghdad, both mirror Murphy's readiness to confront overwhelming foes. General Stanley McChrystal, once leading Joint Special Operations Command, contends, "Tech alters the form of conflict, but its essence endures. At its core, war is a clash of human spirits." The grit Murphy displayed at Holtzwihr, one man's refusal to yield no matter the disparity, remains eternal. Within the U.S. Army's Maneuver Center of Excellence, his engagement imparts vital lessons, like securing advantageous ground, sinking artillery, and the mental aspects of warfare. Murphy grasped that eliminating adversaries alone fell short. He needed to crush their fighting spirit. His unyielding, precise shooting persuaded the Germans that pushing forward equaled doom. As the globe hailed Murphy as the nation's top-decorated warrior, the youthful Texan waged another conflict, battling the inner shadows that trailed him stateside. The figure who displayed utter fearlessness atop a blazing tank destroyer quaked at the shadows within his thoughts. Murphy's spouse, Pamela Murphy, wed to him from 1951 until his 1971 demise, offered rare perspectives. Audie bore unseen scars that time couldn't mend. Nightmares jolted him awake with cries, replaying skirmishes from 2 decades past. Yet he persisted in supporting fellow veterans. For Audie, the conflict lingered indefinitely, but he channeled his suffering into meaningful action. By converting his anguish into campaigning, he sparked enduring shifts. Murphy's open talks on PTSD paved the way for accepting battle strain as a valid health issue needing care, rather than a mark of frailty or fear. His efforts empowered innumerable veterans to pursue assistance without the stigma of embarrassment. On January 26, 1945, Second Lieutenant Audie Leon Murphy demonstrated that a single resolute figure could halt an invading force. His defense at Holtzwihr demolished Nazi illusions about U.S. troops. These weren't the feeble, indulged youths depicted in propaganda. They were offspring of ranchers and laborers, forged by economic woes and toil, capable of matching the toughest fighters in history. Germans displayed a rare reluctance to assist their comrades during the defense. The absence of details in German accounts from that day reveals their profound struggle to comprehend or justify the events. This represents the ultimate kind of loss, not merely strategic or bodily, but deeply mental and ethical. They confronted an adversary who excelled in combat far beyond their capabilities. That realization shattered a core aspect of their soldierly essence. Nowadays, the area beyond Holtzwihr has returned to tranquil agricultural land. The wounds from the fight have mended. Craters from explosions have been leveled. Traces of bloodshed have been erased by years of downpours. Yet, annually on January 26th, a modest gathering occurs at the monument honoring Murphy's defiance. Local French residents, U.S. former soldiers, and sometimes aging Germans come together to honor the occasion when a single American fighter demonstrated that bravery knows no bounds. Murphy's tale teaches that true valor doesn't stem from lacking fear. By his own words, Murphy was gripped by terror. Rather, it's the choice to push forward amid that dread when loved ones rely on you. It's the decision to hold firm even though fleeing might seem simpler. It's the act of rising above your ordinary self for a pivotal instant. Ultimately, this explains the astonishment among the Germans when a lone American warrior repelled 250 foes for more than an hour by himself. They faced an element beyond the grasp of warfare theory, immune to battlefield strategies and resistant to superior might, the indomitable will of humanity, personified in a 110-pound Texan determined to perish before allowing harm to his companions. His resistance at Holtzwihr endures as timeless proof that an individual in the precise spot at the perfect moment, driven by the proper resolve, can alter the course of history. The youth who tracked rabbits to sustain his kin evolved into the figure who halted an invading force to protect his allies. Amid conflict, much like existence itself, this shift from the commonplace to the remarkable stands as the greatest startling reality.